Have you talked to your ex since the divorce, Brooke? Asked one of the women at the table, taking a sip of wine from her beaded glass. A group of ladies enjoyed relaxing on the terrace of the Traveller Inn Hotel. Brooke paused before replying, "No, since I kicked him out of the house and filed for divorce with a restraining order, I haven't heard anything else about him. He tried to talk to the children, but after I explained the situation to them, they chose to ignore him." Ellie, who was new to the group, asked curiously, "Was it hard to break up? It seems like there's still pain in the air. When did the divorce happen?" "It's been a year. This cretin dragged his feet with the divorce for a whole year. As soon as he realized the children wanted nothing to do with him, he finally gave up, signed the papers, and left. But in reality, he hasn't been with us for 2 years. Good riddance to him," Brooke said bitterly. Ellie's next question was inevitable. "Why did you decide to take such a step, to divorce him?" "You mean, because he betrayed me with his first love, Gemma Evans?" Suddenly, voices rang out from behind. "Has Jake Vanham cheated?" someone asked incredulously. "It can't be," was the reply. "He's not capable of that. And as for cheating with me, I would remember that. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. You must be playing one of your devious games again, Mrs. Brooke Pack," the girl said. Brooke turned her head so quickly that onlookers thought her eyes might pop out. Well, look who decided to show up." "You've got a lot of nerve," she said. "Look who's talking, Brooke," grumbled Gemma. "You started controlling Jake when we were still a couple. Your deceit led to our breakup, and you still have the audacity to accuse Jake of cheating on you with me." 2 years ago, Brooke continued, "I was studying general linguistics and interacting with international students in Edinburgh, Scotland. I can confirm this with more certainty than you can confirm your current location. I recently returned for a week after a 3-year stay abroad. And before that, I worked as a teacher at a secondary school on the opposite side of the country." Brooke paled at the revelation. She hadn't expected such an outcome, and this news was disastrous for her. "If it wasn't Miss Evans, then who is he cheating with? When I found out he cheated on me, I kicked him out immediately," Brooke demanded, feeling betrayed. Gemma intervened, publicly shaming her. "You ensured he could no longer stay here. I think even his own parents were deceived by your actions. Personally, I don't think he was fooled at all, just influenced by you. Are those kids really his? I could ask, but I have to go. I have important things to do, including talking to Jake's parents." Brooke's face paled again. "Don't you dare. I'll make sure you regret it," she threatened. Gemma stared icily at the woman she once thought was beautiful. "Life has definitely not been kind to you, has it? You wear makeup too often to even look half attractive. And try not to let your hair down, otherwise the resin might get on it." Despite the harsh words, Gemma knew she had to do her duty. "I have to visit your former relatives and tell them that I have an alibi in case of treachery," she said coldly. With that, she turned to leave, taking one last look back before disappearing through the exit. "Thank you for divorcing him. As soon as I find him, he'll be mine. As for your threat, it's absurd. I'm leaving for a new job tomorrow and will never return to this toxic environment." With these parting words, Gemma headed to her car and drove straight to the Vanna mansion. The elegant house looked exactly as she remembered it, 3 parking spaces at the gate and 2 towering ginkgo biloba trees planted by Jake's great-grandparents. There were tall trees lining the driveway, providing cool shade. Gemma parked the car and, taking her laptop from the trunk, climbed the 3 wide granite steps to the front door. She approached the door and knocked politely. The door swung open and Jake's grandfather stood before her. "Yes, dear lady," he asked. "Good afternoon, Mr. Vanham. I'm Gemma Evans. Do you remember me? It's been a long time." Yes, I remember you," he replied with a smile. "Wasn't your name mentioned in connection with Jake's marriage?" Grandpa asked. Gemma nodded, confirming that she had indeed been mentioned. I can assure you, sir, that Jake and I did not have an affair. I have proof that I was in Edinburgh at the time. Rufus Sr. stared intently at Gemma, making her feel as though her innermost thoughts were open to him. After a moment of silence, he spoke again, his eyes flashing. Call me Rufus. It's amazing and brave of you. My son and daughter-in-law think it's all Jake's fault, but I don't agree. I don't think he's capable of that. Why are you trying to clear his name? Gemma felt that this man would easily recognize a lie and would be embarrassed by dishonesty, so she confessed honestly. Jake doesn't understand yet, but I plan to marry him. But first, I need to find him. Do you know where he is, Mr. Vanham? The old man's eyes twinkled slightly as he replied. He doesn't keep in touch with his family, but I can tell you he's currently at St. Christopher's Crossing, working at the university. But I must say, you are a wonderful woman. Let's keep this between us. And I have another secret I want to share with you. I accepted a job offer at the university where he works, so I know I'll see him. A voice came from the back of the house. Father, who is there? The old man grinned and asked Gemma if she knew where the kitchen was. Gemma nodded without turning around and almost bumped into Jake's mother. How brazen you are. Stop it, she screamed. You ruined my son's marriage, and now you come here uninvited. Get out. Jake's grandfather quickly intervened. Anna, she's my guest, and I'll listen to what she has to say. She claimed she was not in the country during this scandalous event. Anna Van Dam's demeanor immediately changed, and she looked at Gemma in disbelief. What? I find that hard to believe, she replied. Gemma calmly took out her laptop, smiled at the older man, and said, I can prove it to you. An hour later, Gemma found herself facing a distraught mother and an angry old man. What should I do now, she wondered. Gemma made the decision to be honest again. I do not know what to do. Jake and I quickly became close friends, at least as close as possible. But everything changed when Brooke came along. Gemma shared with Brooke the heartbreaking story of the loss of a close friend and soulmate. Without delving into her suspicions about an unexpected pregnancy, now Jake had to reveal the truth, if he could be found, of course. Anna was shocked by the manipulative actions of the woman who was the mother of her grandchildren and decided that Jake also needed to meet this woman. Would you like to have dinner with us, honey? Anna asked softly. And please, tell Randall your story of grief, she added. Gemma politely declined, explaining that she needed to prepare for a new job. She did not inform Anna of her whereabouts. Anna cast a brief glance to the side, saying goodbye to Gemma. If you find Jake, please let us know. I think we offended him and made the wrong choice. I really want my youngest son back, Anna said. Gemma replied calmly, if, or better yet, when I find him, I'll give you a message. But I cannot disclose his whereabouts, as it is not within my power. Jake disappeared for a specific purpose, and obviously, he doesn't want to be found. With that, she headed for her car. When she reached the halfway point, a man caught her attention. No, Jake's brother, she thought, watching the man. She noticed his advanced age and increased weight. His gait resembled that of a gorilla. At first glance, he fit the description: rough cheeks, thick neck, broad shoulders, and arms spread wide as if he couldn't bring them parallel to his body. His noticeable belly bulged, his steps were shallow, and his thick upper thighs rubbed against each other as he wheezed like an old steam locomotive. Rufus Vanham studied the slender, dark-haired woman. She looked familiar to him, but he couldn't place her. I wish they would hug me, he thought, entering the house and bumping into his grandfather. Do we have a guest? Rufus asked his grandfather, noticing a figure approaching the gate. Rufus Sr. replied with a straight face. Yes, this is an old friend of Jake's who wants to reconnect. Unfortunately, we don't have his real address. Annoyed, Rufus muttered, this lying little man. I have to keep acting. I have to deal with him in every sense. Climbing the stairs, he entered his specially designed apartment, created for him after an AC accident in the house. Meanwhile, Brooke was deep in thought about her life. The divorce had occurred when Jacob, also known as Jake, was 35 years old, just 2 years younger than her. Their children, born within a year of each other, were already 16 and 15 years old. Their paths did not cross immediately. Brooke first noticed the 18-year-old boy when he finished swimming. At first, she completely ignored him, not bothering to look at him. However, when a dark-haired girl came up to him and began to help him get out of his wetsuit, she couldn't help but pay attention to him. Suddenly, she found him stunningly attractive. She watched the couple closely, studying the guy's facial features. When the girl dried him with a towel and he raised his arms, she couldn't help but notice how his muscles tensed. After finding out that Jake had the toned physique of a swimmer, with powerful muscles hidden under a small layer of fat, she was determined to get him. She began to strategize how to make it a reality, ignoring the fact that he most likely had a girlfriend. It took Brooke 6 months to break down Jake's walls of shyness. Fortunately, the situation became more favorable when Jake's potential girlfriend decided to move, making it easier for Brooke to manipulate the situation in her favor. Jake invited Brooke to meet his family at the monthly family barbecue. She found out he was the youngest of 3 children and appeared in the family late. When she finally met them at a barbecue, Brooke was struck by the similarity of the 2 brothers. The same height, the same hair color, and almost identical faces, but with striking differences. Brother Rufus was superior to Jake. He was built like a brick house with large bulging muscles, while Jake was more elegantly built and had no noticeable muscle mass. If Jake was distinguished by a calm and measured manner of speech, then his brother Rufus was the complete opposite. Noisy, energetic, and focused on superficial communication. Rufus considered himself the smartest of them all and despised his brother. Therefore, he drew attention to an attractive girl among them, deciding to show her more care and affection. It took Rufus a lot of effort, including 2 weeks of gifts and constant attention, to finally get Brooke into a decent hotel. A month later, Brooke began to realize that she had missed her period. When she plucked up the courage to ask Rufus about it, he just laughed in her face and crudely told her that she should have taken the pills. Up to this point, Brooke had only dated her first boyfriend in Rufus. But after Rufus treated her poorly, she decided she deserved better and started dating Jake. 3 months later, Jake and Brooke tied the knot in a small ceremony, and Brooke has been over the moon ever since. She had a devoted husband who cared deeply for her, but also had a reckless lover on the side. Jake was skilled in bed and provided for her, while her lover was just a quick fling for casual encounters. Rufus lacked size, and his efforts were forgetful and did not leave a lasting impression. She did not pay attention to the fact that she did not always reach climax, finding a high in secret from everyone. Just 13 years later, Rufus's rampant lifestyle caught up with him and led to a series of troubles. The abundant and relentless use of substances to improve muscle mass eventually took its toll, and the consequences turned out to be very serious. Everything collapsed when Rufus lost consciousness in the gym. Fortunately, there was a nurse nearby who immediately rushed to his aid and took life-saving measures before the ambulance arrived. Upon arrival at the hospital, doctors quickly diagnosed his myocardial rupture, attributing it to prolonged and excessive use of anabolic steroids. He was immediately operated on and discharged from the hospital with a completely changed body. The muscular physique he once had was now replaced by flabbiness and poor physical condition. It became obvious that he would need constant and long-term care. As the months passed, Rufus began to mentor Brooke, criticize Jake, and convince her to demand more financial stability from him. He posed as a victim, exaggerating his difficulties and insisting that Brooke deserved better treatment. Over time, his influence began to take its toll on Brooke's attitude towards Jake, but not in a positive way. She began to belittle him and find flaws in him. At first, even minor household irritants were enough to trigger Brooke's negative behavior. In the end, she insisted on buying her own car as she did not want to be associated with their old junk. Brooke didn't seem to notice how her actions affected Jake. It was clear that she had never pushed him to this extent before. She faltered when Jake suddenly left in the middle of her long speech. The children came running, asking when their father would come back. "Come back," she screamed. "I'm not done with you yet." But Jake simply retreated to his cramped office, closing the door behind him and turning on his laptop. A minute later, Brooke came into the room. Jake looked at her and gave her a stern order, "Go away right now." After almost 15 years of marriage, Brooke finally realized that Jake had reached a turning point. She had always thought he could take punches, but now she saw that he was actually the kind of person who kept things to himself until they boiled over. It was a revelation to her that Jake only lost his temper when pushed to the extreme. She saw the pain in his eyes as he stared into the abyss she had created in his soul and realized that she had gone too far. Jake had reached his limit and had to defend himself. Jake had always been sure that Rufus would be the one to run the family business. The company flourished by supplying the aviation industry with first-class parts designed to ensure the safety of high-level aircraft operations. Jake, who had received a doctorate in aeronautics and a master's degree in industrial design, was preparing to become the future director of technology, as his grandfather wanted. But everything changed when his father seized control of the company and pushed Jake into the background. Although he suspected his brother was involved, Jake was not overly concerned about this turn of events. He was already overwhelmed with work when his father fired him for a formal reason. His father tried to get him to sign a document prohibiting him from working for a competitor, but Jake only laughed in his face and sang the words of the song, "I am free, and freedom tastes like reality." When he left home, Jake was approached by a major competitor with an offer he couldn't refuse. Resolutely seizing this opportunity, he worked 28 hours a week and received the same salary as when he was full-time at his father's company, but with much better benefits. Jake had long assumed that his father and brother would try to oust him, so he followed his grandfather's advice and founded his own company in Luxembourg. All his freelance work went through this company, and most of his income went to an offshore internet account in one of the European tax havens. Jake never revealed the source of the extra money coming into his regular account, but Brooke assumed he was taking on extra work to earn it. She didn't ask this question, as it made their financial situation more comfortable. In the end, Jake decided to transfer all the money to an offshore account so that his freelance work would be separated from his regular income. He was not going to give up part-time jobs because they were necessary for him to sign contracts and ensure financial stability, but he realized that he needed to pay more attention to communicating with the children and reduce the length of the working day. The next morning, Jake was sitting at the kitchen table, watching the news on his tablet and sipping his usual coffee. Brooke came into the room and asked, "Where have you been all night?" "I've been waiting for you." Jake replied, only about 5 minutes before falling asleep. "Don't be so cynical, Brooke. Tell me everything before I leave. I want to say a few words to you." Brooke bit back a sarcastic reply on the tip of her tongue. Instead, she calmly replied, "The word is yours." Jake spoke in a tired and disappointed tone. "I've been working non-stop for several days in a row to meet your demands. I sacrificed time with our children and my own well-being, but now it's over. I've reduced my workload and set boundaries. If you want more, you have to contribute too." After a short silence, he raised his hand as Brooke began to speak. "I'm not done," he interrupted. "Your attitude towards me is unacceptable, and if this continues, we may have to consider a divorce. The decision is yours, and I'm leaving. And for once, I'll have a breakfast that I didn't have to cook myself." With that, Jake left the kitchen before Brooke could respond. She sat in shock, staring at the closed door. She had never seen Jake like this before. She took out her cell phone and dialed Rufus' number. "Rufus, Jake is being stubborn again. "I'm at a loss how to deal with him," she said with a sigh. Rufus chuckled, "I saw it coming. I have a backup plan." Meanwhile, Jake was sitting at his desk when his secretary informed him that he had an unexpected visitor. Perplexed, he asked if there were any meetings scheduled for that day that he did not know about. "No, sir, but she says it's very urgent," the receptionist replied. Then, an elderly woman came into the office and introduced herself, handing him 2 sealed envelopes. She said, "I regret to inform you that you have already received a summons." Shaking her head, the woman left the office, telling the secretary to keep an eye on him and noting how terrible the news was. Jake stared at the envelopes, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over him. Finally, everything would be completed. He had foreseen this moment, but the pain was still unbearable. What he did not expect was that the envelope contained a restraining order prohibiting him from contacting his wife, children, and parents. What really surprised him was the officially signed document confirming his relationship with Gemma Evans. It caused him deep pain. He began to perform the necessary procedures. Naturally, his bank accounts were frozen. He found out from his colleagues if there was a lawyer among them to whom he could turn, but unfortunately, there were none. However, one of the clients who faced a similar situation recommended Ed, his lawyer, to Jake. As a result, he rented a modest apartment. Now, back to the present moment, Brooke overheard Olivia and Brian talking quietly. Although their voices were low, Brooke could still make out that her son seemed to want to share a problem with his father. Curious, she intervened and suggested, "Why don't you talk to Uncle Rufus about this?" "If you have a problem," Olivia replied sarcastically, doubting the wisdom of seeking advice from a man she considered a sweaty fat jerk. Brooke was shocked and offended by Olivia's disrespectful comment. She clenched her jaw to keep from revealing her father's true identity. "Wait, is he your uncle?" Brooke asked incredulously. "Yes, but not the best uncle," she admitted. "He offered me terrible things." The daughter looked at her with disgust and said, "And that's not what he asked for." Brooke couldn't believe it. It was her own daughter, she thought. If what she says is true, then God help us all. That evening, many skeletons were removed from the closet. Brooke couldn't ignore the disturbing truth that Rufus was a threat to her and her children, even though nothing bad had happened so far. She saw him as a potential danger. The only reason her children were confident and able to stand up to Rufus was the self-esteem that Jake instilled in them. The real problem was Brooke's impending dependence on Rufus in terms of financial support and lifestyle. Jake paid significant alimony, ensuring their comfortable situation, but soon everything was going to change. Brooke found herself in a difficult position and regretted some of the decisions she had made. "It's nice to meet you, Leonard Dalra." Gemma Evans greeted him with a smile. "I've heard a lot of good things about you, and I'm looking forward to working together." Professor Dalra spoke about the university in his own experiences, mentioning that he was a widower and lived with his girlfriend. The friendly conversation ended with Professor Dalra mentioning that he had arranged temporary accommodation with his friend Nathaniel Thompson, who lives along the St. Christopher Trail and runs a guest house. "If you are looking for a cozier option, I recommend exploring the residences in St. Christopher's Forest. Some houses are located next to the lake, and several plots of land have a building permit for university staff. However, I must note that the most suitable site is already occupied by our part-time assistant." The professor looked at her thoughtfully and then added, "This person works great with children who may have learning or behavioral problems. Our new training center was created specifically to help children reach their full potential by someone who prefers to keep a low profile. I really wanted him to become a teacher at our center, but he declined my offer." Meanwhile, Gemma was exploring St. Christopher's Wood, and after 2 months of acclimatization, she decided that she wanted to make this place her home. When Nadia Thompson was walking next to Gemma, they came across a sign that caught their attention. It read "Land for Sale," and at the bottom, there was a postscript stating that the construction permit had already been received. Gemma couldn't help but express her admiration for the picturesque place and said, "I could live here, but I wonder who would be able to design a house that would complement the natural environment and revitalize it." Nadia replied with a smile, "I know exactly such a person, our close friend, an aeronautical engineer and designer who has the skills and vision to create a dream home in such a beautiful place. You should have seen the house he designed and is building for himself. He usually keeps to himself, but when he opens up, it's really nice to talk to him. I invited him to dinner on Friday, so you will have the opportunity to meet him if you are interested," Nadia said with a smile. Meanwhile, at the Van Dam house, Brooke hesitantly asked. Grandfather Rufus Van Dam turned to face her, his sharp eyes studying her intently. He recognized her as the mother of his great-grandchildren, a woman connected to the wrong person. Sensing her distress, he asked softly, "Yes, dear, what happened?" Brooke hesitated before asking, "Do you know where Jake is?" Rufus Sr. was silent for a moment and then mysteriously replied, "I can neither confirm nor deny this." "Why are you asking? Problems in paradise?" Brooke was stunned by the unexpected question and struggled to find her voice, but eventually managed to whisper, "Yeah." The old man couldn't help but notice Brooke's reaction. It was clear that it was time to talk to her about Rufus Jr. in a stern tone. He remarked, "There are disgusting moments in Rufus' character, don't you agree? And his dependence on steroids certainly doesn't improve the situation." Brooke hesitated and said, "I don't quite understand what you're talking about." The old man chuckled and warned her, "Don't try to deceive me. I may be old, but I'm far from weak, as my son and eldest grandson often think. I understand perfectly well that these two charming children of yours are not Jake's children." "How ridiculous," screamed Brooke. "Don't underestimate me, dear. I'm willing to put all my wealth on the line. You have blue eyes, and Jake has green eyes, and both of your children have brown eyes. This is almost genetically unlikely. They clearly don't look like Jake. Rufus and Jake were so similar to each other, but Rufus had brown eyes, and Brooke spent a lot of time in his bed." Brooke's world collapsed when she heard her grandfather's words. The backs of the chairs creaked under a grip, and her fingers turned pale with tension. Despite all her efforts, her tongue remained paralyzed, unable to utter a word. Her grandfather's accusations pierced her heart, his words deeply wounded her. He accused her of putting her life at the mercy of the wrong person, allowing him to dispose of her and their children. And now, faced with an unexpected dilemma, she dared to think about getting Jake back. "I wouldn't help you find Jake even if I knew where he was. Now go," Rufus Sr. said decisively. After Brooke left, Grandpa stood at the window in deep thought and reason. Maybe it's finally time to write this long letter. During their stay with the Thompson family, Jeff and Nadia managed to get closer. But so far, she has not been accepted into their house. While waiting for an answer to her knock on the door, Gemma looked around the neighborhood, feeling a little uneasy. When the door finally opened, she was greeted with, "Hello, you must be Gemma. My name is Nathaniel, but to everyone, I'm Nathan. Nadia calls me by my full name when she's upset." "Don't be shy, come on in," Nadia's husband said, letting Gemma inside. Gemma was taken aback when she noticed the scar on his face. When Nathan took her to the kitchen, she noticed that he was in good physical shape but slightly limping. What could have caused this? A friendly greeting awaited Gemma in the kitchen. She introduced herself to Jacob, their young son, and then turned her attention to Nadia. "The beauty of this house and its surroundings is simply breathtaking. How did you come across such a treasure?" Nadia's expression changed for a moment as memories flashed through her mind. This is a story filled with both grief and joy, but in the end, it ends on a positive note. I'll share it with you one day, but out of respect for Nathan, I have to get his permission first. This is a story that very few people know about, known only to a select few. At the moment, I can only point out that Nathan successfully wrested power from despotic local leaders and defeated them. And Jacob is not my son, he is the son of Nathan and his late wife. But I'm happy to announce that in 6 months, Jacob will no longer be the only child in our family." Gemma hugged Nadia and said, "This is amazing news. I can't wait to find out the date of the baby's birth." Nathan interrupted her mid-sentence. "Gemma, let me introduce you." But before he could finish, Gemma exclaimed, "Jake." Without thinking, she rushed to him and hugged him. Jake remained unperturbed and simply said, "Gemma, we haven't seen each other for a long time." Feeling awkward, Gemma released him from her embrace. Nadia and Nathan exchanged glances, and Nathan asked, "Do you two know each other?" Before Gemma could respond, Jake said, "We used to be friends." Gemma's joy quickly turned to sadness, and tears appeared in her eyes. It was not the joyful meeting she had hoped for. She almost burst into tears when she asked Jake, "Why are you so distant? Aren't you glad to see me? I've missed you so much." Jake was stunned and puzzled by her reaction. He glanced at his hosts, but Nathan just nodded and offered, "We have to leave you two alone, you can use the office over there." Sitting in the office, Jake watched his once close friend, who was now visibly upset. "You informed Brooke that we had an intimate relationship during my marriage to her. I even signed an affidavit. This revelation eventually led to the destruction of my marriage. Why should I be glad to see you after the pain and betrayal caused by this lie?" Reflecting on the extent of the deception, Gemma felt a surge of anger towards Brooke for orchestrating such a manipulative scheme to tarnish Jake's reputation in their society. In a determined tone, she turned to Jake, demanding his full attention. "I need you to listen to me carefully," Gemma said. "Before coming here, I lived abroad for 3 years. I once heard Brooke bragging about it in a pub. I couldn't resist exposing her in front of everyone. Shortly after that, I went to your parents to explain where I had been for 3 years. I also talked to your grandfather, who assured me that you are doing well and that I will most likely see you soon. That's when I decided to find you, unaware that our meeting would happen so quickly. I admit I really missed you," Gemma said. Jake blushed at the last words. "What about the affidavit?" Jake asked.